Center here, IS Center, and to some of you, you may know him as a professor here at Webster University. But for me, he's my comrade toast. So I'm going to give it to him to welcome you here.
Thank you, So I've been asked as the chair of the IS Center, to just welcome you, and that's what I've come to do. I'd like to welcome all of you who are living here, who are staying here. I hope it's comfortable and not too inconvenient. If there's anything we can do to help your stay while you're here, don't hesitate to ask. We are very grateful and appreciative for you to have come to stay with us, and of course to come to Ghana. I'd also like to welcome those of you all who are visiting the IS Center for the first time. Maybe just a few words about the IS Center. It is designed to bring cultural awareness and enlightenment to faculty and students from abroad who come to Ghana. We're a single-purpose, multi-service organization. So we organize workshops and seminars, excursions, internships for mostly students from abroad. That's what we do. We also have an NGO that we started, Kids Going Green for Ghana, KG3, which is designed to educate the youth of Ghana, children, about the environmental integrity of Mother Ghana. So that's what we do as an organization. But as Brother Sebukwe mentioned, I'm also an organizer for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And in that capacity, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Kwame Nkrumah, who come to embrace the occasion and to welcome you all to this great event. Again, as an organizer, I'd like to thank the PD Committee, Public Education Committee, and the Program Committee for organizing this event. It's a very critical event around a very important document, a groundbreaking document. Nkrumah, of course, wrote many books, and one of the gifts to me of Nkrumah is his ability to write in such a concise and simple way. With the exception of maybe consciences and Nkrumah's books, for obvious reasons, Nkrumah's books are written for just ordinary people. And this book, probably more than any book, is so simple. You have some thinkers, scholars, writers who are trying to impress themselves and others with their language. It's difficult sometimes to understand, but it's not easy to write for the masses. And this book that I think we're discussing today, probably more than anyone, is so simple, despite the depth that is covered. Just look at the rules of discipline. I can just touch on that because I know you guys will talk more, but obey orders. Return what you borrow. Don't take liberties with women. This kind of thing. Protect the children. This is how the book is written. And so the last thing I'll do before I turn the mic over to is to also acknowledge our senior brother, Sekou Neblet, who has been here in the party and organizing A-APRP nearly from its inception. So we're very appreciative of Sekou being here tonight.
Yes, well, yeah. We're going to point him out so everybody we won't make him, if he wants to stand, he can stand. If you don't feel like it, you won't make it.
So again, welcome to the IS Center, welcome to Ghana, and let's begin and have a great program. Thank you.
Okay, as I said, I'm Sebukwe Shakur, one of the organizers for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Just just to lay out these 2 days. This is our opening to talk about again, to talk about the 50th anniversary of the Handbook of Revolutionary Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. Thank you. To talk about the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. This is 50 years also of the founding of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, which comes out of the concepts that were written about in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. So I just want to let people know that we're also going to get into and have open discussions and guided panels about the handbook tomorrow over at the university, in particular at the, what is it called? The Ideological Center, the Nkrumah Ideological Center. We're going to be having all-day discussion starting 3 panels. We're going to start at 10. We will go all the way to, I believe that we end about 4:45, between 4:45 and 5 o'clock. You can, if you can't make the whole day, we hope you can. But if you can look at the schedule and we can provide it for you if you don't have it. If you know you're coming or if you suspect you're coming and you want to be there, we're going to provide some lunch around noontime or close as we can get it to. So people can sign up. We're going to be using a vegan restaurant or a vegetarian restaurant tomorrow. So there are a couple, 3 or 4 choices out there that you can sign up for. So that's kind of the housekeeping that I need to do. And we're just going to have our brother, our comrade Imani, just say a few words. Our brother who is also with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, but also here representing the PAIGC, the Party of Cabral, the African Party for the Liberation of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. That's what that means. But he's here. He's also a member and organizer with us, as I said, the A-APRP, one of the central members, and he's going to talk about why is it necessary in today's climate for us to talk about the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare.
Well, greetings, comrades. First of all, I want to apologize. I don't know if I'm speaking loud or low because my ear is still on the airplane. I can't hear anything because it's all black. It's an honor to be in the land of a Sagifo, Kwame Nkrumah. But I don't feel good with our comrades standing there in the middle. I would like to see them closer to the front. If you don't mind. Right? Please.
I will come later, but do you want me to come later?
If you don't mind, please. And while Comrade Sammy is coming in front, I would like to introduce Comrades to... I would like to introduce Comrades to some faithful comrades, and I mean faithful, honest comrades, who are continuing the works of Kwame Nkrumah in Guinea-Bissau. The works of Accra in Guinea-Bissau, the works of Sept in Guinea-Bissau, the works of Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, of Jose Marti in Guinea-Bissau. First, I would like to introduce, it's an honor and privilege to introduce comrades to the Secretary General of the Democratic Union of Guinean Women, which is called UDEMU, which is the women's section of the PAIGC, but it was founded in Conakry in 1961. Comrade Engineer Bolani, Nyama, Ntama, and Yase. She was just elected at the Congress, the 4th Congress, which was held last year. She's also recently elected to the Central Committee and its Political Bureau of the PIDC at the most recent Congress, which was the 9th Congress, held in January and February. And she's also an ideological child of Kwame Nkrumah, Secretary of the Canada. Because the PIDC, when it would liberate parts of the land of the enemy, it would organize schools, would organize people's stores so we had our own economy. It would organize judicial committees so the people themselves could be involved in bringing about real justice. And it would organize its own politics, and the best students in these schools would be selected and sent to Conakry, to what they call the pilot school, to train those political cadre who know that Africa so badly needs And Comrade Blunt was one of those best students in the liberated territories. And she was sent to Conakry at the pilot school where she was very close to Amir Cabral because the pilot school is close by the secretary of the PIDC. So Cabral would go there just about every day to talk with them and encourage them. And when Kwame Nkrumah would come to visit, he would go by there. And sometimes they would go there. And the Secretary Ray, all these visitors, Fidel Castro. We're also accompanied by Comrade Lamine Sisi Jr. He's the National President of the Jurisdictional Council of the Amir Cabral African Youth, which is the youth of the PIC. He's Lamine Sisi Jr. Lamine Sisi Sr. is one of those Comrades militants that picked up the instrument for liberation and became one of the commanders in the People's Revolutionary Armed Forces. So he's following the footsteps of his biological and ideological father. Also the delegation has Comrade Segolding Dami. She's a sister who's honest, courageous, very intelligent. She studies at university, and she supported the Amir Cabral African Youth and the PIDC's political ideological school of Amir Cabral. Well, you can't really talk about the importance of the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare in one night. So we won't try it. The only thing we can say is it's not a book. And when you talk about it, you're not giving a book review. If I write a book, you can give a review on that one. But if somebody's trying to give you strategies and tactics, which our people so much beg for, because in terms of, we say that the main things that our people are missing is coordination of our political military actions as well as a common ideology. Those two things, those are main things they're missing. But what the people are begging for is strategies and tactics. And this is why our enemy does everything and anything they can to make sure they keep our people blinded from these strategies and tactics. So we're thankful to our ancestors that we had a comrade, we were blessed to have a comrade walk among us, be among us like a fish in the water, who had courage enough to use every position that he had to properly interpret the proper directions for our people to take. To understand the importance of the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, a guide for political military action, you have to understand the roles that Osachi for Kwame Nkrumah played in our history with not only the liberation movements in Africa, but the African Asian People's Solidarity Organization, which held its last conference in 1965 in Winneba, which is where Che Guevara came, Fidel Castro sent letters, and they would coordinate how can we now open this up to the Latin American revolutionaries. Because Che Guevara, the year that people say, where's Che? Where's Che? Che's missing. Was he killed? Che was in Algeria. And he was coordinated with Osachi for Kwame Nkrumah. Not only to take guns back and forth to the liberation movement, but it was actually Che Guevara who helped to organize what is called the High Command of all the liberation movements in Southern America. From Chile to Uruguay, Paraguay, to Bolivia, to Venezuela, all over Latin America, it was Che who organized this. And all the guns and the weapons and the diplomatic offenses came from Algeria to South America. Thanks to Che, thanks to Fidel, thanks to the Communist Party of Chile, and thanks to Osachi for Kwame Nkrumah. If you look at Guinea-Bissau, you see that the PIDC coordinated its armed struggle with the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, as well as with Frelimo, the Liberation Front for Mozambique, and the Movement for the Liberation of Saint Tomé and Principe. They had a coordination body called the CONCP. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. CONCP. Concept. It means Comrades, Organizações Nacionalistas de Colônias Portuguesas. For the first time in African history, you had 4 different political formations struggling for the liberation of 5 areas. 4 and 5 areas. Because the PIDC is the liberation movement for Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Frelimo in Mozambique, MPLA in Angola. Amir Cabral was one of the founders of the MPLA in Angola. He also founded another party before that called the Partido Unido de Lutas Africanas in Angola, which is the United Liberation Movement Party for the Africans in Angola. They're the ones who came together with other formations like the Communist Party in Angola, the National Liberation in Angola, and they formed the MPLA on the 11th of December 1956. 3 months after they founded the African Party of Independence. That was its original name, not PIC. African Party of Independence, PAI. Nkrumah was involved in all of this. The first meeting that happened among the concept organizations was in Morocco. Who helped organize that? It was Nkrumah. Because you had, at that time, what they called the Casablanca Group, which was Guinea, Ghana, Egypt, Mali, Morocco, but 7 different countries. But the main nucleus of it was Guinea, Ghana, Mali, and Morocco. And Egypt, with that saying. Thank you. If you look at the historical records, you can find this on the internet. You can find records, documents written by Marcelino dos Santos, who was one of the founders of Frelimo in Mozambique. He became the executive secretary of Concept and used to be based in Rabat in Morocco. The following meeting took place in Ghana, which a lot of people don't know, because they were having a meeting among the Casablanca groups in Ghana. So Nkrumah wrote a letter to them, asking them to change the date that they proposed to have the meeting and have it in May, around May 25th in Ghana, so they could be there with all these independent states. Because Nkrumah was strategically organizing throughout the continent and the world the best ways that we could carry out the African Revolution and the anti-imperialist revolution, because those two go hand in hand. If you look at the first conference, the first tricontinental conference that took place in Havana, Cuba, in January 1966. A lot of people think that maybe Fidel Castro just woke up, washed his face, and said, "Let me organize a conference in Cuba." No, it was a part of this process. This process that Nkrumah was involved even before he became the prime minister of Ghana, because he used to send cultural books here to go to the meetings of the African Asia Solidarity Organization, which was more moderate, came out of the Bandung Congress. They wanted to make it more revolutionary, and also to try to harmonize what was the conflict going on between China and the Soviet Union at the time, the Sino-Russian conflict. Because they would use these forums to argue. The Chinese would accuse the Russians of being racist and not willing to take the revolution around the world, and then the Russians would accuse the Chinese of being impatient. And so Nkrumah, they said, we're tired of all these fussing and overflow. The way we can smooth this out is bringing the liberation movements of Latin America, especially since we had the triumph of the Cuban Revolution in Cuba. So it was at the last meeting of the African Asia Solidarity Organization that took place in Winneba in 1965, where Che came. They appointed Mehdi Ben Barka. You heard of him? Mehdi Ben Barka was a revolutionary who helped to bring independence in Morocco. But the king of Morocco, you know, they weren't struggling to have a king, they were struggling to have a democratic society. The king of Morocco, Mohammed V, had these serious contradictions with Mehdi Ben Barka, so he had to leave the country. He was chased out. He was kind of like what we call a traveling salesman for the revolution. He spent a few days in Tunisia, a few days in Egypt, a few days in Ghana. But it was at the last meeting in Cuba, it was at the last meeting that took place in Ghana, they appointed him to be the president of the Preparatory Commission for this first Tricontinental Conference, which was the biggest major coordinating body of all the anti-imperialist forces in the world. The revolutionaries in Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh and Giap. The revolutionaries out of China, led by Mao Zedong. The revolutionaries out of Africa, from Guinea-Bissau to Cape Verde to Mozambique to Angola, Zambia, Namibia, Zimbabwe, they were all there. And all the ones from Latin America, the ones from Guatemala, led by Turcos Lima, the ones out of Venezuela, etc. All these forces came together to coordinate the armed struggle and to found an organization called the Organization in Solidarity with the Peoples of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Have you heard of this organization before? OSPAL. O-S-P-A-A-L. Kwame Nkrumah is one of the founders of this organization, but a lot of people don't know. Amilcar Cabral is one of the founders of this organization, but a lot of people don't know. Because they want to hide this from us, so we don't know the strategies that we should take. Even we've heard recently, some people say, oh, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare was very relevant in the 1960s when the armed struggle was really hot in Africa, but you know, things have changed now. Everything changes all the time. But one thing that hasn't changed is that imperialism still dominates the world. Imperialism still uses the most insidious methods to exploit our people in the world. Everything changes all the time. Of course, we have to change our tactics all the time. We have to be vigilant and make sure that we keep up what's going on 24 hours over 24 hours a day. But, comrades, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare is one of the best roadmaps that I've ever seen. I've studied it, not just read it, but studied it. We continue to study, we debate on it. You read the handbooks of guerrilla warfare by Che Guevara, which is very relevant. But you can't put it into practice in an undialectical way. For example, if the handbook of guerrilla warfare says you should go up to the mountains and throw Molotov cocktails at the railroad tracks. Well, in Guinea-Bissau, for example, we don't have mountains, so we don't have railroad tracks. So you can't apply that like that. You have to do it dialectically. You can look at the handbooks of guerrilla warfare written by Mao Zedong, which is very relevant. But the one by Kwame Nkrumah, I think that it's a synthesis of all the experiences that we gained from Mao Zedong, from Che Guevara, from General Giap, from Ho Chi Minh, from our revolution, from the PIDC. And it said that after Nkrumah wrote the first manuscript, he left it in the State House. We went to go to Hanoi to broker a peace accord. Of course, on the way he stopped to China to say hello to Mao Zedong, and that's where he was informed that a coup had happened by him. So he came to Guinea Conakry, the People's Revolutionary Republic. He rewrote the handbook. When he rewrote it, he gave a draft to Amilcar Cabral. Give me your opinion, Cabral, since you're doing the arms struggle. Gave a copy to the Secretary. Give me your opinion. To Stokely Carmack, later called Kwame Nkrumah. Give me your opinion. This is where he rewrote the book, which was finally published 50 years ago. So, comrades, in just a very few words, we review what we said before. You can't talk about the importance of the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare in one day, even in 1 year. If you start if you start a class here from morning, afternoon, and night for the next 4 years, you won't finish studying the handbook. Because the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare requires that you study and put into practice. That's what Nkrumah says. You gotta be among the people like a fish in the water. And the most difficult times, be in front of the people to take all the hardships. But when you have victories, and good things are coming, stay behind the people, let the people take this victory. But on a day-to-day basis, be among the people like fish in the water, like the children of the people. This is the only way that we can understand the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, by putting it into practice. So, comrades, in just a few words, we just want to really strongly encourage you, you who are looking at the videos, you who are here from those who are here, to study this because the enemy studied it. The enemy took the manuscript, and then after the book was published, they took a lot of this away. I read in Letters of the Life of Kwame Nkrumah, where he said that he gave me one example. He sent some copies to Malawi, but they got sent back because of the sabotage. But now you can have a copy on your pen drive, you put it in your Facebook, on your LinkedIn, or on your email, and you can send, I did it, send something to Malawi. I said, okay, you can do it then, we can do it now. So let's do that. Let's put the Handbook of Revolution on the lips and the eyes of all of our people. Not just African people, but all anti-imperialist people. Can we do that, comrades? Yes. So we say, long live the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. 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 In practice. In practice. Long live the revolution. Long live the revolution. In practice. In practice. Not just in the mouth, not just in the words. In deeds. Thank you, comrades. Thank you, Kwame Nkrumah. I stand you for never die. I stand you for never die.
All right. So we want to thank our brother for giving us some inspiration here. And what we want to do is we ask Nia Day to come up here. And he's going to share with us, right? He's going to share with us a poem. But while Nia is making his way up here, I want to remind people, the party decided to have this seminar here in Ghana, but it's part of a process. It wasn't just an event. We started this process with calling, not for people just to read the handbook. We wanted people, of course, to read the handbook, but we also wanted them to give an analysis, because we understand things don't stand still. So we wanted people to say, if the handbook was being put together today, what would they put in? What would you suggest needs to go in it? What aspects need to be updated? So some of the papers we'll be discussing tomorrow are part of that process. We're still calling on more people to take a look at it. If you get an idea, something you want to write about, to add or you think it should be added, we're going to go through those papers as a party and decide which ones really need to be used to update the books. So Niade, of course, is a long-time organizer here in Ghana. He was one of the earliest organizers of the A-APRP here. He's a stalwart. All of the organizations in Ghana respect him, whether they're in the A-APRP or in any other organization. I'm proud to be his comrade, and he's a hell of a poet and writer. He writes well, whether it's for poetry or whether it's prose or whatever. But he's a hell of a writer, and we're going to hear from him right now. Thank you. Can you take it away?
Thank you so much. And revolutionary greetings to our comrades who are here. It is very impressive to see all these comrades who I haven't seen for a long time gathered over here. Also, one comrade who I started work steady with, Comrade Lewis, who is not with us anymore, but his son is here. That's Kwesi Brown. And I am very glad Osaki's work is still going on unabated. I have a short poem here, which was based on the theme of this gathering, divided by colonial borders. And this poem is dedicated to A-APRP at 50. Divided by colonial borders. Divided by colonial borders, weaker politically and economically. United by history and culture, stronger politically and economically. Forward with one unified socialist Africa that must be. Borderless Africa, yours to get. Colonial borders must go. A gift from the enemy. Reject it for the sake of self-reliant, independent African economy. Backed by gold, not petrodollars. For without economic freedom, poverty, despair, hopelessness, beggar status will be Africa's lot. Take a stand. Africa must unite for prosperity, peace, and progress. Divided by colonial borders, weaker politically and economically. United by history and culture, stronger politically and economically. Forward to one unified socialist Africa. The price of disunity is costly. It manifests itself negatively. Weak national currencies, weak national economy, weak national armies, weak neo-colonial states, powerless neo-colonial head of states, natural resources in foreign hands, no voice in international affairs, price of our minerals determined by others, guaranteed continued economic exploitation without redress, price of disunity, costly indeed. Divided by colonial borders, weaker politically and economically. United by history and culture, stronger politically and economically. Forward with one unified social Africa. Under a union government of Africa shall emerge a powerful African nation. Colonial borders shall be obsolete. Sovereignty, customs, traditions of states, big and small, shall blossom. No more border disputes and wars. No more voiceless and powerless leaders. No more weak African currencies. Rather, a powerful African currency, the Afrique, whose monetary zone is the African continent and beyond, divided by colonial borders, weaker politically and economically. United by history and culture, stronger politically and economically. Forward to one unified socialist Africa. That must be. Every institution represents the interests of its founders. United Nations, World Bank, International Criminal Court of Justice, International Monetary Fund, European Union, AFRICOM, and NATO represents North African interests. Build Africa's political, economic, and military institutions. Build the African High Command. Build the African Common Market. Build the Central Bank of Africa. Issue the single African currency. Build the All-African People's Army. Build the All-African People's Revolutionary Party to represent and safeguard African interests, divided by colonial borders, weaker politically and economically, united by history and culture, stronger politically and economically. Forward to one unified socialist Africa. That must be. Thank you.
All right, thank you, brother. All right, so we're gonna try to move on with the program, but I do want to ask all of the members of the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union that are here to come up front. All right, I see you. Stop hiding. People may come. Let's come. Let's come. I'm going to also ask that our sisters from UDEMU and JOC come up to join us.
About the pioneers.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. The pioneers. Okay. All right. Sister,
Yes.
I want to say first, this is a little story. I first met Samia in Atlanta after she did a lecture. She was on tour. She did a lecture at Spelman University. She didn't have time. We had tried to do an interview while she was there, but we didn't have enough time. She had other things that she was committed to. She promised to do an interview with me. We set up a date. She got up at 1 o'clock in the morning, because we were like 7 to 6 hours apart, and did the interview at 1 o'clock in the morning her time. This is a person who announced that she would be going back to Ghana on that program. And very soon after that, she returned. I'm going to ask her to join us. She's not only, as we know her political activity didn't start here in Ghana, but she was already writing as a journalist. She was already doing activism with women and children. She was already involved. So I wanted to come up here with all of our rest of our sisters. And I'm going to have our sisters, the A-AWRU, because as far as we're concerned, all of these organizations are the same. UDEMU is a part of the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. So, can you all welcome our sister here? Who's going to take the mic? Maybe all of you.
We welcome you to this evening's event. We are proud to have you as a mother, as a sister, and as a friend to look up to. And we would like to hear what you have for us. We are eager to hear. And as women, we would like you to know that we are behind you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to say one more thing. Oh, go ahead. No, you were going to say something.
No, I was just thinking, maybe they should be sitting down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they don't have to stay up the whole time. It's just but I did also want to let everybody know that we talked about the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, but Samia is also launching some of the books and republishing some of the other books that Nkrumah wrote. And she's going to tell us more about that also, right?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Do we need this?
But only for the,
Right.
if we pick up.
Good evening once again. And thank you very much for having us here today with you. You cannot imagine how grateful we are to those of you with the A-APRP, those of you who have been studying Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah's work and the works of other revolutionary leaders who've been guiding us for years, for decades. I salute you all because there are very few organizations which actually spend time, their members spend time studying. You are one of the few who are doing that. So I want you to know that partly what has brought me to you is in recognition of this great work you are doing. Because as Osagyefo said, you know, behind every social revolution, there's an intellectual revolution. And that we need thought, the right kind of thinking to guide us into action. We cannot just get up and go. We need to study, to ponder, to think. And our consciousness has to reach a certain level before we can have the courage to change our lives and the lives of fellow Africans. So what you are doing has been a great encouragement, source of encouragement to many of us. And I want to confess that even though some of us have read Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, but when we entered active politics, some of us had not studied him in depth. We read him, we read some of his works. In fact, it's being inspired by his works that made me enter active politics. It's just reading Kwame Nkrumah that gave me the courage. But as I was saying, we had not spent time studying him in detail, systematic, regular study. And when you enter active politics, you know that the one thing that will make you so strong that you will never compromise and you will never give up is studying Kwame Nkrumah and all our other great pioneers of African thinking and revolution. Now, when I entered active politics, I didn't realize that the terrain would be so tricky. All the political parties we have, you have those, some who denigrate Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah and minimize his contribution. Others who pretend to be Nkrumahs, to be following Kwame Nkrumah's principles and line, whereas in practice, nothing of the kind. So the terrain is hostile. And your only weapon is what? Is your thinking. So I want you to know that your presence today here, hearing what you are doing, is giving some of us great strength. It's empowering. So please continue. Many people might not hear about the A-APRP, but you can rest assured that some of us hear you and are following you. And we want you to remain strong, to even grow in strength, because I know that we are going to meet one day. We are going to meet as we are taking steps to realize the African Revolution. You know, I was born in one of the most important years for the history of Africa. I was born in that great year, 1960, when many countries gained independence. And our mother tells me, when I was born, Kwame Nkrumah came to the house with a big bouquet of flowers. And she told him, but what is this? You didn't do that when the boy was born. He said, yes, because this is a girl. This is a girl. Do you realize how influential women were in the struggle for independence? Moreover, my mother continued, moreover, we are going to become a republic in 7 days. You see, I was born 7 days before Ghana became a republic. 1961, July 1st, 1960, I got the republic. And he continued that, not just that, about 10 women are going to enter parliament under what will today be called an affirmative action bill, but that was called, I believe, the People's Representation Act, women. 10 women entered parliament. So he told her, this is a great thing. This baby is bringing good news. 10 women are going to enter parliament in recognition of the important role our women play in our struggle. And I recall from Handbook, I'm sure, Kwame Nkrumah's statement that you can measure the degree. Perhaps I'm paraphrasing one word or two, but you can measure the degree of a country's revolutionary awareness by the political majority of its women. And indeed, for genuine change, you need strong, genuine women to be part and parcel of the struggle, working with our men to realize the African Revolution. I take this very seriously, and as I've grown and matured, I sometimes take consolation from the fact that out of the 4 of us, we are 4, the children of Kwame Nkrumah, I can honestly say that I'm trying hard to put what I'm learning in practice. The only woman, the only girl, let's say, Osagyefo's only female biological child. And of course, it wouldn't matter at all whether I'm associated with Osagyefo by blood or not, if I were not an Nkrumahist by conviction. And it is the studies that I'm continuing, that I'm pursuing, with strong, revolutionary, brave, courageous young people, that together we are studying Kwame Nkrumah's works all over again, all his books. We haven't come to Handbook yet, so you will probably have a lot to teach us. But Handbook, as our brother says, is an incredible piece of work. And it is true what our brother said, that Osagyefo was very upset when the illegal overthrow of his government happened. First and foremost, because his office in Flagstaff House was raided and ransacked. And he was very upset because of all the material that was destroyed or taken away. He says that in Dark Days in Ghana. And some of his colleagues who worked with him have told us this time and again. And it is true, he had started writing Handbook in Ghana before the illegal overthrow. But he had to revise and have a completely brand new version when he was in Guinea as co-president and brother and revolutionary leader of Guinea after '66. Now, Handbook clarified many things to me. Because I remember thinking, when I was younger, what is Pan-Africanism? Is it a sentimental dream, a drive, something that every African feels? Is it a concept? What is it? And I remember when I came across the definition, that it is the total liberation and unification of Africa. I said, yes, now I know what we must do. In Handbook 2, Osagyefo clearly outlines the objectives of the African Revolution. And he simplifies it, as our brother says. Make it so easy. He makes it so easy for you to follow those teachings. Nationalism, of course, that's the first step. We can't do anything without that, without national liberation. But he tells us we cannot stop there. We cannot stop there. Unfortunately, that's where many of our countries have stopped. This is where we are right now. We have political independence, and not even fully, and we are stuck. We don't have economic independence, as he was reading or performing in his poem. So we know that even though it's a necessary step, it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient to end poverty. It's not sufficient to give every African clean drinking water, to give every African woman the assurance that she can give birth in comfort, that she doesn't have to be carried across rivers and arrive perhaps sometimes too late, as you might have heard in a recent story that emerged here in our country a few days ago about a lady who lost her life, who gave birth to a stillbirth, and another who gave birth to a stillbirth child, because at the last moment, when she's ready to give birth, she had to be carried in something like a makeshift structure to reach the clinic or hospital for health. So where we are now is a very dangerous place. And as Osajifo said, nationalism, it's a necessary, but just the very first step. We need to get the courage to conscientize ourselves to move from nationalism, our separate, small, as he says again in Handbook, unviable, economically unviable states, to have this, what do we call it, integrated nationalism, to move to the second objective he listed, and that is Pan-Africanism. Now we can see that our institutions, our leaders, are moving too slow on that front. We don't know what the AU is doing. Oh well, we know because we read some of the documents, but we don't really know. And when I say we are talking about the people. Are there people in our villages, in our schools, discussing Pan-Africanism and African unity? Are they? I don't think so. No. The people, the masses of Africa, are not discussing African unity. They are not. So this is our calling. This is our duty. Those of us who are studying, those of us who are learning, we have to go to the people with that message that Africa must unite. And we are not talking about any kind of unity. We are not talking about economic integration or regional groupings. We want to go back to what the original idea, political unification, unity of thought and purpose to guide all other forms of integration. All other forms of integration. And by the way, this December, we are working with a global Pan-African movement to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the All-African People's Conference. I know it happened before many of us were born, but it was a very important conference. Only 8 countries were independent at the time, and the independent African states met in April. But Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah's leadership said no. What about all the other African organizations? They can't be left behind, so we will hold the All-African People's Conference right here in Accra. And we want to use that anniversary, 60 years after it happened. We want to commemorate it in a grand style and use it to give us the courage and impetus to propel us to campaign for unification in our various countries. And I'd like to invite the A-APRP, many of you who are working hard to raise awareness. I want to invite you to be part of the group of people who will shape that movement to campaign for unification. Because this is the realization we are all coming to. If the people don't take charge and own this unity struggle, it is not going to happen. Or at least not for another 100 years. And we cannot wait for another 100 years. There's a new scramble for Africa. Actually, it's not new. It's been happening for decades and it's continuing. But it seems to be intensifying over the last decade or so. The scramble for our resources, for our land, for everything we hold dear. It seems to be intensifying. And if we don't somehow do something, we the people, if we don't do something, we fear for the future. But particularly those of us who've studied Kwame Nkrumah, how can we sit back and do nothing? Because we have precious tools to propel us. So we need you in that struggle. Be part of Accra. Let us shape the movement that is going to campaign for unity. Let us shape it in the right way. Let us try and give it that ideology that we know, without which we cannot move forward. We are campaigning for full sovereignty because we know we don't have it. We want full sovereignty. We want to complete our liberation. That is what Kwame Nkrumah meant by total liberation. Not half, not a quarter, but total, full sovereignty. This is what we need. And when we have that, it will be easier for us to reorganize our societies so that no one is left behind. And that is why in Handbook, he lists it in this order: nationalism, Pan-Africanism, and then socialism as the objective of the African Revolution. I'm going to be studying Handbook, but particularly after today, I'm going to be reading it thoroughly. You've given me I would say maybe the excuse to read it fully, in addition to all what I'm doing. And I wish you well in this seminar. Know that you have a sister, you have a comrade, and you have a friend. And know also that you have somebody who fully understands where you are going and what you are doing. We might not have always met because we get distracted with what we are doing, with our activities. But we are never going to give up. We are continuing. I believe that some of us have to keep on vying for political positions. Because in addition to armed struggle, which is always there as an option, there's also the struggle at the balance, the struggle of the balance, if you like. It is there, and we don't want to be left out of that also. We don't want to be left out of anything. So if you don't see us from time to time, you know that sometimes this balance struggle takes us far away and distracts us to no end. But like you, I've learned from experience, from practicing politics, active politics, I've learned that my first weapon is my mind. And the mind we are struggling for is the mind of Kwame Nkrumah and all our leaders and pioneers who've lived and died for Africa and Africans. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for your words. It means a lot to us. And thank you for coming out and being with us. I don't know what time it is, but is there any questions from the audience? Anybody who has any questions of Samia? If there's not.
I got a question.
Oh, you have a question. Go ahead.
What is it going to take to get you to Toronto, Canada?
Sorry?
I need to know.
What is it going to take to get you to Toronto, Canada?
Oh dear, oh, just the right time.
Just let me know the right time, please, let me know the right time.
Okay, let me know. Just
Okay.
let me know and we'll talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to say, we would welcome an article. You know, if you, I know if you're going to be studying, we'd like to know what your thoughts are on the, and we'll send you some of the papers that have already been written to link you in to what we're already doing and what has already been produced. And hopefully you can add to it. We know you can add to it because you add to it whether you're writing it down or not.
And how can we get her to get it beside?
That's your question.
We talk about all the main objective is to reprint Osagyefo's books, all of them, so that they can be available in Africa, not only in Ghana, in Africa, in different languages, and be affordable and available to Africans. You know, we realize that we can't find the books, and even when we find them, they are terribly expensive. Students and teachers cannot afford them. And that I don't want to go into the reason why, but suffice it to say we have no control over that. You know, so we are trying hard to make sure that in the years to come, the books will be everywhere. So that's one thing. And you are right about axioms, because I've heard from many people that, you know, this is one quick way of just refreshing your revolutionary spirit and mind. Absolutely.